What if I told you this guy Dricus DuPlessis has some of the worst looking striking you've ever seen? It's so ugly, sloppy, and slow that you would think he's a beginner fighter if you ain't know who he was. But somehow, some way, he used this horrible striking to beat some of the best strikers in the UFC and become champion. Let's get into it. DDP's primary striking tactic is to blitz his opponents. When I say blitz, I mean an aggressive, burstful, lunging attack, usually 2 to 4 punches, just like how they do in karate. The reason DDP's sloppy version of the karate blitz works so well is because most fighters make the common mistake of backing up in a straight line, which plays right into the strength of that blitz, which is attacking in a straight line. The best way to defend against this blitz is, instead of backing up in a straight line, you back up at an angle, which is done by stepping diagonally. Israel Adesanya did this very well against him throughout that whole fight, which is the main reason he was winning that fight until he got caught. But you see, the reason he got caught is because he made a crucial mistake. While he was doing the right thing and circling out, he made the huge mistake of keeping his arms out like a long guard while he was circling out. This is effective against shorter opponents with a shorter reach than yours. But DDP was not that at all. DDP is huge, so he was able to get around Adesanya's long guard and touch him up. Even though DDP was able to find a way to hurt and beat a man who was once considered the best striker in the UFC, there was this unsuspecting fighter that made DDP pay for this horrible, sloppy technique of his. DDP had a fight against a fighter named Darren Till. You see, Darren Till decided to fight DDP a little differently. Most fighters, when they're fighting DDP, when he blitzes them, they decide to just go backwards and disengage. But Darren Till figured out the best counter to DDP's blitz is simply to just stay in the pocket and throw elbows down the middle while he's coming at you. Now, DDP did go on to win this fight, but not because of his striking, but instead because of his grappling, which leads into the main reason DDP has been able to become champion despite his horrible striking. You see, at the end of the day, this is not kickboxing, this is not boxing, this is mixed martial arts. And it just so happens that DDP is really fucking good at mixing up his martial arts. I noticed DDP is excellent at shooting takedowns when you least expect it. This is why his takedown percentage is so great. The average takedown percentage in the UFC lies between 35 and 40%. But DDP's takedown percentage is 50%. That is only 3% less than the best grappler in the UFC currently, which is Islam Makhachev. So it's safe to say he is one of the best at taking the fight to the ground if he wants to. One very effective tactic I noticed DDP uses to open up his takedowns is he feints a striking attack to get you to react and then shooting a takedown during your reaction to his feint. He also likes to just simply break the striking rhythm and shoot a takedown when you expect him to strike. This is probably the single most important thing that has led to him winning his fights. But when it comes to striking, there is one thing he does very well that I must give him his credit in. You see, even though DDP has horrible punching technique, he does a great job at mixing in his kicks. He keeps his opponent guessing with them, always throwing kicks in between his blitzes. His output with his kicks is definitely an underrated aspect of his striking, I must say. But there is one thing that stands most important above all else when it comes to his striking. It's so important that this alone is what genuinely keeps him competitive when he is fighting other top strikers despite his horrible technique. What I'm referring to is the great equalizer that is punching power. Most of DDP's success in striking, the few times he has some, usually comes from the fact that he is able to hurt his opponents. You see, all it takes is one good shot to land, and I don't care how good you are, you're eventually gonna get hit. Even though DDP seems to be very bad at striking from a technical perspective, he has enough power to hurt you if he catches you clean. We witnessed it against Adesanya. He hurt him with hooks and then took advantage by taking him down and choking him out. We also witnessed it against Robert Whittaker. He hurt him with a jab and put that pressure on him once he hurt him to the point Rob was just too hurt to fight back. His power is extremely important to the success he's had. But I will argue you that there's certain intangible traits that he also possesses that are just as important as that power. These intangible traits I'm talking about are things like toughness, heart, chin, etc. This dude DDP is one tough bastard. He gets picked apart pretty much every fight, but he just keeps coming. He will not stop. His will is just simply unbreakable. He has that true heart of a champion. Most fights I've watched of his are usually the same story. It usually starts off with him getting picked apart on the feet. Everyone pretty much thinks he's losing the fight, but he ends up making it a dogfight, a tough, gritty, ugly fight, then miraculously finds a way to win. I like to think of DDP as the MMA Rocky. If you don't put him to sleep, he will find a way to win. But just like Rocky, putting him to sleep is damn near impossible because he got one hell of a chin. DDP reminds me a lot of Merab Dvalishvili. Not the most technical, always the underdog, but they have amazing intangibles and use them to always find a way to win.